Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Feelings Matter, brought to you by Mindful Appy. This week, we are talking again with Karen Reynes from NAMI Central Texas, and this week we are discussing stress management in particular. Before we get started, Tina, is there anything you want to provide, maybe as a little color commentary as we get started?
I don't think so.
Tina is definitely not stressed. She is managing it well, and she is very chill over there. Hi, Karen. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys doing today? I
Clearly,
think,
Tina is chill.
you know, I love seeing Tina, right?
Chair
And both of
dancing.
your smiles. Before we got started, I could feel the more relaxed energy. I think it's really interesting. One of the things we have to recognize is that so often we're riding the little roller coaster of depending on what's going on, right? Whether it's in our professional lives or in our personal lives, that sometimes we'll be in different places. And the good news about that is that we don't need to be stuck, right? Whenever we do feel like we're really stressed out and having a really bad day, it's like, that's the good news. Like, you don't have to be stuck there, right? But it's a good reminder. And I certainly felt that way this week because I felt like last week we all had like a lot on our minds and we were really, the energy was a little more heavy. And this week I just feel that lightness. And so love that we're all kind of in the same place this week. So yay.
Excellent. So,
Yeah.
as we get started, Karen, obviously we want to talk about managing stress, but I think one of the first
Mhm.
steps to managing it is being able to recognize it and go, "Hey, I'm feeling a little bit stressed. Can we start there, maybe?"
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things that we need to do is start there, is recognizing how do you know when you're stressed? And I think being cognizant of that is super important because it allows you then to recognize, oh, I'm gritting my teeth. Oh, I'm obviously stressed. Oh, I'm going to the refrigerator and grabbing something to eat, but I'm not really hungry. So what are those signs that you have? So I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, what are those signs for you that you know you're stressed?
I know I can be a little irritable when I'm stressed, and my
Mhm.
emotions are maybe a little harder to regulate,
Mhm. Yes,
a little snappy.
absolutely. I bet there are lots of us, myself included, that would join you in that. That's why I often talk about the fact that we tend to think about stress that something is that's internal, right? It's our own experience, but it's important for us to recognize that stress, like many things, has a ripple effect. The people around us oftentimes will recognize when we're stressed because of that kind of behavior. When Tina's usually a way more chill and relaxed, and then suddenly it's like, oh, don't talk to me right now. Yeah, people know you're stressed. How about you, Michelle? Any like that's my like indication I know I'm stressed.
Usually that sense of overwhelm, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get it all done.
Mm,
The anxiety starts to kick in. So
mhm,
anxiety is kind of something that I constantly deal with.
mhm,
And as the stress levels rise, obviously my anxiety levels will rise.
mhm.
So the physical aspects of that anxiety function start to kick in. The
Tell me
heart rate
more.
goes up, your
Yeah, tell
blood
me more
pressure
about that.
goes up,
Okay.
all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yes, the physicality of it.
Might get a little sick at my stomach if it's really
Mm,
extreme.
Yes, yes. I know for me, one of the things that will often be an indicator is I will fall asleep easily, like I usually do. I'm very fortunate in that respect. Like it's bedtime, I'm tired, right to sleep. But when I'm stressed, I will wake up around 2 o'clock in the morning and I literally will be like, and it's this like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. And same thing, like my heart starts beating. It's like, okay, Karen, chill.
Mhm.
And so that's definitely one of the signs for me. When I wake up like that, it's like, oh man, I'm stressed.
Mm.
So I think it's very interesting and not surprising. We know that there's a lot of physicality to stress. We tend to think of it as emotional distress, and it certainly is, but our brain and our bodies are connected, right? So it's not like, oh, I feel emotionally stressed, so it all stays in my head. No, you feel it everywhere. Michelle, you mentioned some very physical, right? The upset stomach, the heartbeat racing, all of those things. And that goes back the head
I get
pounding.
migraines. I get
The,
migraines and
yeah,
stress. Yeah.
yeah, the headaches. Anybody, either of you do the knots in your
Oh,
shoulders?
constant. Constant.
Michelle, are you like me? I went to the massage therapist and I remember telling her, like, if I came more, like, if I come like once a month or so, like, could you get rid of those? And she just laughed and she said, I think you should just name them because you're just like, you
I'm
always
almost to
have
that
them.
point. I
Um,
am almost to that point. You know what? You mentioned it. I'm going to show you one of the things that I have because obviously the pandemic made going to get a massage difficult.
yes.
So
Oh,
I
okay.
got
Oh,
one.
the
I
wheel.
don't know if you guys have seen these, but this is the chirp wheel.
Okay.
And basically, you can either lay down on the floor or I actually use it like up against the wall. I
Uh-huh.
get it right where I need to between my shoulders. And because of this, I can work my knots myself.
Oh,
We're
I
not
gotta take a
receiving
look at
any,
that.
no paid
Yeah,
promotion.
we're,
No, no,
Chirp
no
wheel.
pay promotion or anything like that. No,
but we should
but
contact them.
Mhm.
it's funny that you mentioned it because look how easily in reach that was. I mean, it's like right here on my desk. I could show you that easily because that's one of my
I
go-tos.
love that though. How proactive of you to say, I know this is one of the ways that my body expresses the stress and what can I do about that? Because again, going back to what is it? How does it manifest itself for you? I think we talked a little bit about that ripple effect, right? That we have this tendency to think it's just us, but it actually ripples out. So I think that's really important as well, is understanding that one of the reasons that it's important to learn how to manage our stress and mitigate the impact of it is not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us, because our stress impacts other people, just like our joy does, just like our empathy does, so does the stress. And so if you have a stress filled workplace, you've got to, each person needs to be navigating that. And same at home, because our kiddos and our partners and spouses, and they're going to recognize it as well. So I think that's key, is recognizing that. And then I think one of the things I've talked about before is really understanding that stress cycle. And I think that's really important, is understanding how that stress cycle works and and what you need to do to complete that cycle. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think I mentioned even at the last podcast about that great new book called
Mhm.
Burnout, from Doctors Amelia and Emily Nagoski. And it's not necessarily their research, but they're really elevating this notion of that stress cycle and how you complete that stress cycle and how important it is to do that. So, recognizing that I mentioned earlier, stress can be anything that you perceive as stress. Like the people around you may not think, what are you making such a big deal about that? Doesn't matter. Your body says, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out about this deadline or whatever it might be that's going on. And so your body goes into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And guess what happens, right, Michelle? All that stuff you mentioned, you pointed to it
Mhm.
as anxiety, but even people that don't live with anxiety, their heart rate will go up, their blood pressure, right? All those things happen. And so the physicality of it means it has that also ripple effect, because basically your body's saying, hey, I'm in fight, flight, or freeze. So it shuts down the digestive system. So your digestive system gets slowed down. That's why you might get a tummy ache or feel kind of, you can feel it in your belly. There's a reason for that. Our immune system also gets shut down or slowed down. That's why, have you ever had times when you've been like super stressed and you've had a lot going on, and and the thought you've had is, I cannot get sick right now. And then you get sick, and that's why, because that's how the stress manifests itself. It brings in stress chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol, all those stress chemicals. So all that stuff is building up. And so what Burnout really talks about in this book is the importance of recognizing when you've been stressed and then having some action which completes the cycle. It's an action that allows those chemicals to be released, allows your blood pressure to slow down, tells your body, we're okay. It's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen. And they point to about 7 different things that we can do. One of it is physical activity. So yeah, does that mean taking a run? Sure, but it also can mean jumping jacks at your desk, going up and down the stairs a few times, taking a brisk walk around the block. It doesn't have to be these big things. It can also be proactive, like that notion of being proactive about it and regularly having exercise really can be helpful in terms of mitigating the impact of stress on our bodies. So exercise is great, but so is physical affection. And the physical affection doesn't mean it has to be romantic in nature. It can actually be, a hug, um, and the importance of that. And in fact, they talk about this 20-second hug, this notion of really giving someone else a hug, a nice firm hug, right? I love like this. We've seen this culture of people standing out, right, with their signs like free hugs and all that. Well, don't diminish the power of that, the actual power that has for us to lower our stress, calm us back down. It's a great tool for us to be teaching our kids as well, recognizing the power of that, and also understanding the recent studies show that you can get the same impact by just with your fur babies. Our body actually releases good chemicals and slows down and all that when we look at our pups or our kitty cats, straight in the face, and all those good feelings that you have from, so fur therapy, it's a real thing. Um, like breathing, that's huge. Okay. And many of the programs that I offer, regardless of what the topic is that we're covering, I start with a minute breathing exercise, because I think so often we fail to recognize. I talk about that as a practice for managing stress, because so often I'm going to talk about some three different practices, but the reason we call them practices are because you have to practice them. Like they don't just come to you automatically otherwise. Going back to what I mentioned, when I'm stressed out, I wake up in the middle of the night and one of the things I've discovered is in the last couple of years where I've really had this practice of getting up in the morning and having some breathing and meditation time in the middle of the night, when I wake up like that now, I can just breathe. And I just use box breathing. So that's just the inhale for 4 counts and hold it, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold that exhale for 4 counts. That's all it is. Super simple. And I find that in no time at all, I'm back to sleep. But breathing also tells your system, hey, everything's okay.
Mm.
Creativity, playing the piano, playing the guitar, doodling, all those kinds of things. Um, Lots of different ways in which we can really slow all that down. What was the other thing? I'm trying to think of what the other things on that list. Hold on, I'm pulling that up because I
No, you
forgot.
mentioned creativity.
Creativity. I think laughing. Okay, those were the two. We talked about these last week, about the laughing and the crying, that those are other ways to
Mhm.
complete the cycle. I've sort of challenged some of the workplaces that I've been. It's like, you know what? Like, how awesome would it be to have some space in our workplaces where people could go and do their jumping jacks or, whatever, right, to release, or sit down in a quiet space to breathe, or to have a good cry, and that we could really get back to that place of feeling empowered by that notion instead of thinking of crying as something that's weakness. Like that's just a cultural thing that we've
Mhm.
really just reinforced over and over again. Oh, don't cry, don't be a baby. It's like, what if we recognize that crying is this really powerful way to say, okay, I'm done stress, releasing all those chemicals, and then laughing as well. So lots of real simple ways to close out that stress cycle. And then going back to the practices, so there's that overlap where I think that practice of breathing is really important. Meditation or yoga or some combination of that. I mean, to me, when I do yoga, like it is by its nature meditative, but it's also that physicality of it. So it's a nice combination. I use a meditation app. Do either of you guys use any kind of meditation app or tried one that you liked? Tina?
I mean, yeah, there's so many great ones. Just that like Calm is
Yeah.
so easy. There's a lot of great ones that I've tried. How about you, Michelle?
Have you tried any of those?
Um, I've tried Calm a little bit. I also, it's interesting that you mentioned breath work because I just recently downloaded Breathly to try more
Awesome.
options with breathing, and because I'm finding as I get older that it's something that I need to pay more attention to, just as my body needs exercise. I need to do a better job of really breathing well.
Mhm.
And it can help not only the stress, but also weight gain and in any number of other things. And so that was kind of where my mind went to, was what can I do to be more mindful about my breathing?
Yeah. And I only mention apps because I think so often I know for myself sometimes I just need something to help guide me. And to me, that's all an app is doing is help guide me through that. Like I used to use the app for the breathing. And now that I've practiced it enough, I don't need the app. I can just do it on my own. I still like to use the app sometimes. I use Calm sometimes and it offers different variations for different kinds of breathing. You want energized breathing? Okay, the counts are a little bit different, right? And sometimes I'll just use that, right, as a
Mhm.
guide. One of the other apps that's really great for anybody who hasn't used an app before, and I mean, Calm, Headspace, some of these others, like there's a high premium for them sometimes. Insight Timer is a
Oh yeah.
great app that has literally, I kid you not, thousands of meditations that you can use at no cost. Like there's no charge
Mhm.
to them. They do have a premium, but I don't know how you'd ever get to that because they have so much free stuff. But they have breathing, guided meditations that are, someone, kind of guiding you through them, but sometimes it's music. They have stuff for kids. They're a great resource if you've never tried it before and want something. I know for me around the meditation as well, I have a hard time quieting down. And because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, although I say I'm a recovering perfectionist, like I'm trying to get past that. But part of the reason I wouldn't meditate was because I really thought, oh, I don't know how to do this right because I keep having thoughts. It was great to do the app because it taught me that it's like, oh, that's totally normal for thoughts to be coming into your head, and here's how you deal with that. So it's been, a great experience using the app. So I really want to encourage that.
I have a question for you, Karen.
Yeah.
I love to study positive psychology,
Hmm.
and I'm wondering in your readings about stress management, has curiosity ever come up? Because I have found that when you can clear that space and like take the breaths or take a walk, that in emptying the mind almost allows new things to come in, which I think can foster a state of curiosity. Has that ever come up
Yeah.
in relationship to
Yeah,
stress?
that and also sort of something that resides very closely that you're sort of starting to lean into, which I would think is sort of creativity or that
Mhm.
ability to just create space for new thoughts and ideas. People talk about taking walking meditations, doing a so you're just walking and you're not plugged into a podcast or anything else. You're just allowing yourself to be mindful, and those are the times sometimes when your head does get an opportunity to clear. And so I think, again, I used to have this friend that would tell me, if you don't have time to meditate, then you probably need to meditate, right?
Mhm.
Because I think so often we get busy, we feel like we got to get stuff done, and we don't feel like we have time to slow down to create that space for curiosity and creativity. And yet it can be the best investment you make, especially if you're stuck. Like I have found that sometimes when I'm feeling stuck, the best thing that I can do is take some of that time. So whether it's taking a walk and not plugging into anything, just letting that openness happen, or just sitting and meditating or breathing. But I love that you brought that up because I don't think we often think about that as another one of the gifts that comes from taking that time to slow down and breathe and meditate.
I
So
think it gives us resiliency, which is really kind of almost the description of mitigating the risk of burnout.
yeah, yeah,
Is
absolutely.
learning these tools will help you become more resilient, and have less episodes of getting sick and have less episodes of
Yep.
tripping and falling because you're not paying attention or losing
Yep.
sleep. Oh my
Yep.
goodness, how much
Yep.
sleep have you lost? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
I think so often what it is that resiliency is so connected to the things that we're talking about. Because to me,
Mhm.
resiliency is rooted in us having our own little toolkits, of what it is, recognizing what we need, and then having that toolkit and then using it. Like you don't want your toolkit to get rusty and dusty. Like you want to be taking it out and using your chirp wheel or pulling out your app or taking time to do some yoga or starting your day with exercise or whatever those things are that build that resilience in us. Because guess what? Like the stress isn't going to go away. It's been worse because of the pandemic, because I feel like we've been in this chronic state of stress. But
Mhm.
regardless, like And stress is just part of our human condition. It's part of our experience. Like I was talking about earlier, that kind of roller coaster ride sometimes that we go on, and good weeks, good days, where some days are more stressful than others. And that's just life. But recognizing that we don't, we are empowered to manage that and to own it, instead of feeling like, oh no, I'm stressed. And our tendency is to sort of hunker down and feel right overwhelmed. And that's like a horrible place to be, right? Like I've been there before, where I've heard my say, I just feel overwhelmed. And you just kind of want to put the, you know, and having that toolkit and being reminded, it's like, okay, I need to go take a walk. I need to connect. I need to talk to a friend, whatever those things are, and recognizing what's in your toolkit. We should all have one. And then, like I said, I think there's some things that are really basic that ought to be in everyone's toolkit. I want to go back to the last practice first, which is gratitude. So I talked about breathing, meditation/yoga, and then I think gratitude is the last practice that I think can be so helpful to us as we navigate really sometimes stressful situations. And gratitude is really, again, has to be a practice. Like it's something that you're doing regularly, because it then gives you a lens to say, here are the good things in my life. Because oftentimes when we're stressed, we're only seeing like 95% of everything going on can be really good. And then that 5%, and we get laser focused on that, right? And we're super stressed out about it. So that ability to just sit down and slow down and practice gratitude can be really helpful. You can do it in any number of ways, right? So whether that's before you go to bed, what are, naming those 3 things. I think I've mentioned to you guys before, I have a little gratitude jar. Like I just have a jar where today I had yesterday I was dealing with a number of things. So I felt like I was still dealing with some stress from yesterday. So I made sure that I sat down today and I did some breathing and meditation, and I pulled my little gratitude jar out and I wrote down the 3 things I was thankful for, put it in the jar. Like for me, the ritual of that is just like, hey, there's a lot of good stuff in my life, even on a really stressful day where I'm nervous and a little anxious about what's going on. Okay, then I want to talk about some real basic stuff. I love this quote that I heard last week, that sleep is the Swiss Army knife of good health. And I think sleep is one of those things that we also don't recognize is one of the ways that we can manage our stress better. Like, and that is rolled into some of the most basic of things. Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating well? Are you, staying hydrated? All those just real core fundamental health things. Recognizing again that stress is this emotional piece. Yes, we feel it emotionally. We think of it as something in our minds, but it impacts our whole body. So we can mitigate some of this by also just taking basically good care of ourselves.
Are you saying that I should have a nap instead of a glass of wine? Is that
Yes. Tina, I'm so glad you brought that up. I mentioned to you yesterday was a stressful day. It is so weird because we live in a culture in which, like, I was so stressed and I was like, I try not to drink at all during the week. Like, a drink is sort of my treat for the weekend, right? And mostly because my nutritionist said to me when I went to her, it's like, hey, alcohol should not be a staple in your diet. I was like, okay, so those everyday glasses, which I think a lot of folks did in the midst of the pandemic. That's really when all that was going on, right? So, but my go-to was, what I started to say was, like, immediately, where my brain went? I need a glass of wine. Like that's
I'm familiar with that thought.
Immediately said, I need a glass of wine. And so now I've sort of gone to this place where I'm an adult. If I feel like I want a glass of wine, I will have one. But I always challenge myself and say, what's that glass of wine about? And is there something else in your toolkit that you could use to mitigate the stress? And for me, it was going downstairs and to tell my family, like, and just getting a little bit of love and attention. I mean, that's really was just like, oh, I got a few hugs. I'm sorry you had a really stressful day. And then it was like, okay, like I'm okay. And that urge completely went away. So I think that you've named something, which is recognizing that sometimes we have negative coping skills that we've developed to mitigate that stuff, and being mindful of that, because that can become a habit that can be, counterproductive to that, because
then add more stress
and add more stress.
and
Exactly.
you're not sleeping as well.
I was just going to say, you oftentimes, we think it relaxes us, but it has been shown that oftentimes it actually goofs up with your sleep cycles. Sometimes you're not going to sleep well because of it. You may, if you have too much, not feel good, and so not feel 100%. And so I woke up this morning, I got a good night's sleep. I made sure I drink lots of water last night, because I notice hydration really impacts my stress as well, or it kind of plays a part in that. So
Mhm.
just that basic good care for ourselves, I think, is important. And then, because I'm in workplaces a lot, I've really been challenging employers as well to recognize that we have a culture in workplaces in which we overvalue um, this notion of hyper productivity, and that and we do it in ways that we don't recognize. And we've talked about this before, where you can work in a company that has unlimited PTO, take all the time you want. But the reality is, the underlying messages that we get when we do take time off, and we're getting emails that, when we're, or text, or the message that we get is, oh yeah, we're getting, like, you get this time off, but you can't really take it off because we need you and we need things right away. I think I mentioned to you, like, being really impressed by this company. That's One of the employees sent me an email, and that in their signature line, it very clearly states that they don't respond to emails after hours, that we really believe in the work-life balance of our employee. I mean, I love that, because you know what? I go to companies that they make sure that their employees have access to an EAP, and access to Calm, and a gym, and all of those things. And you can do that. That's awesome. It's great to have those benefits. But if the underlying undercurrent workplace culture is one in which we don't really allow our employees to take good care of themselves, and provide them with the tools they need, which is sometimes policies, to manage their stress, well, then yeah, all that stuff isn't going to
Mhm.
matter. And burnout is a real issue. I mean, I shared with you some of the statistics around that, of how many people these days are talking about the burnout experience. I think we talked about this last week, like 4 million people left their jobs in August. And they're saying, like, the studies are showing, like, if you haven't left your job, lots of people are thinking about it. Right. So, and we know that the cost of retention is really, I mean, having to retrain folks and bring new folks in, like, every time, sometimes a company loses an employer, like, they've lost tens of thousands of dollars in
Mhm.
training and the investment you've made in someone.
I think it's
So
150%. I've read a
yes,
stat before. It costs 150% of the annual salary of the person
to
that
replace them.
quits to replace them.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's a huge issue. And so I think I'm seeing and hearing lots of employers that are recognizing that. But again, sometimes I think they're focusing on the objects, the thing, like, here's an EAP, here's access to all these things, and they're not investing in really looking at the policies and culture. Um, I did a I did a keynote address a couple of weeks ago for a group of CEOs, and I thought it was really interesting that there was at least one person in the room who I was talking about all these things, all of these same things, and how you need good sleep and whatever. And literally, there was this guy in the audience that was just like, yeah, like, I don't need any of that. Like, you know, and so I'm thinking, wow, okay. I think that thinking, that two things happen there when you have leadership in that, with that kind of thinking. If that's the way you lead and you say, I don't need that, the message you're sending to your team is, and you shouldn't either. So, and one of the things that I was trying to impart to them is what I just said. It's not just about you. People that are in leadership need to recognize we are modeling the behavior. And so we're modeling behavior where we overwork, where we're up at 4 o'clock in the morning sending emails, where we never take any time off, where we never have dinner with our family, all of those things. Then we're modeling it for our teams. And at some point, they will get burned
Mhm.
out. And
Mhm.
because we're just all human. And even this person, he may be doing some things that he doesn't realize that's helping offset that. And I did sort of hear that. Like, he makes sure exercise is really important, and he sets aside time. So he's clearly, like, put something in place to offset some of those. But what is the message that you're sending to your teams? And I really kind of challenged as I walked into this group, because I really said, it's sort of countercultural, but What if success and productivity is actually the best of success and productivity is actually rooted in self-care? Countercultural because we think it's just go, 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 hard work, hard work. That notion that when we take breaks is when we're completely on empty. And that's the question I asked them. How many of you work from that place where you're completely empty? And how hard it is when you get to that place to refill your tank. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm at my best when my tank is full, right? When I've done
Mhm.
all good sleep, good food, laughter, time with my family, time with people that I enjoy, all those things. Like I'm just a happier, better version of myself for everyone, including for me.
Mhm.
And we got to value that. And that's a big culture shift for us. And on some level,
Yeah.
I think the pandemic is helping accelerate that culture change.
I mean, what if
Indeed.
when people go back to the office, managers schedule meetings in the gym if they're lucky enough to have an office with a gym?
Sure.
I mean, something outside the box, just come up with a
Yeah.
new idea
Yeah.
for,
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
encouraging.
I know this one leader who, when he does his one-on-ones with his direct reports, they go on a walk. I mean, this is when they were in the office, but he was like, "Oh, we never like sit at a table or, wherever. It's like we go on a walk." So they physically walk while they're talking. He goes, "Man, the conversations completely shift when we walk." I loved that. I love what you just said. I've been challenged, like, what would it look like if you start with, because again, I'm showing them what a 1 minute breathing exercise looks like. What if you start your team meetings with everybody just stops and takes like it takes 1 minute? Because the studies show even just 3 deep breaths where you're doing that inhale, where you feel it in your belly, not your shoulders, right? But you feel that you're inhaling, your belly pooches out, and you're just taking that really deep inhale and a really deep exhale, and doing that 3 times literally just resets our brain, just completely
Mhm.
shifts how we are thinking. It clears our mind. So what if you did that? What if you did that with your teams? So you're modeling that. What if you take a vacation and you really don't check your emails, and they know you don't because you're not emailing them, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like I know in my role as a leader, that's part of what I've been called to do is I can't encourage my team to take time off if I'm not doing a good job of that. I have to model for them. And so I try to take 2 weeks off. And then I try to set things up so that they don't get emails from me. They know I'm not working. And then I tell them, if I can do it, you can do it. And if there's something that's keeping you from that, how can I help you figure out how to overcome that? Because you will come back so much more full of energy and enthusiasm for the work. You're going to be the best version of yourself if you take this time to just shut down and go play. I just think we're not a culture that really values play, even with
Right.
kids, right? Like that notion of kids being outside and just digging in the dirt, how that can be a form of really them growing and learning. We think that they constantly have to have, these days it's iPads with educational whatever, but it's like they need to run around outside and, talk to their friends and, play on their bikes and come up with their own inventions of games and, use cardboard rolls, to play their sword fights or whatever that is. And we've shifted in how we think about play. And I think as adults, then too, we don't recognize sometimes that we need to play, and how much fun it is to do that.
Well, I know as an adult, I still play in the dirt. I love gardening is therapy.
There
I
you
I love
go.
it. So, yeah, I happily go dig in the dirt and get my hands all messy and the whole thing.
My kids laugh at me because during when the weather's, I mean, so 2 weeks ago when it got down into the low 60s, high 50s, we set up our fire pit. I love doing that with my family. And we'll just sit out there and tell stories and roast marshmallows. And, they're all adults now, but it's like, it's so just the best of time. But
Mm.
they know that I love collecting all the wood. So we have a big backyard and there's little twigs and like that's my thing. I set up the fire, and then if we're running out, like I'll get my little flash down. I'm at the backyard. So what they have some silly name for me. I can't remember what it is, but like I'm the twig lady or something. I don't know. But um, to that point, like there's something about that. Even just being outside in nature, I think, has that really amazing impact on us. Tina, is there anything that you really like love to do
Yeah,
that's fun?
fun is so I've always kind of visited and revisited my core values for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And it took me about 10 years to realize that fun is a core value of mine. That like if something isn't fun at some level, then I just don't want to be doing it.
Mm,
You know, and took me a long time to even give myself permission to admit to myself that fun was really important to me and to make space and make time for that. And after this, I'm actually doing something that's like fun. I've started taking voice lessons recently. So I've always wanted to, I've just been a car sing in the car kind of person, and I've always
uh-huh.
wanted to learn how to do it the right way. And when I go with my sit with my voice coach, and we do these exercises that are working on like vocal fry and resonance and all these different things, I literally just start clapping my hands like a toddler because I'm having so much fun. And it just like, just to learn something that's so new and so different for me, but also creative, is really fun. And it, you know, if anybody has not just sat down and really thought about what is it that is fun for me to do, it is really worthwhile to like make a list and explore things that you are maybe different than you would ever really think that you would normally do, and go push yourself outside of your comfort zone because it's fun.
Yeah,
And
I love it.
that also helps reduce stress because you might
Yes.
laugh.
Yes, yes, and just the experience of doing something fun that brings you joy does really it closes out that cycle. That's the kinds of things that complete that cycle. I know Michelle last week talked about ballroom dancing. Same kind of thing, right? It's like, what is that? Like one of the things I often tell people is you should really strive to I love what you said, Tina, being intentional about making that list of the things that bring you joy, that are fun, that reduce your stress, so that you can go to those things and be reminded and say, oh, yeah, I really love this, and making sure that you're integrating it into your life. I challenge people to think about what's something relaxing or fun that you do every day. It doesn't have to be a big thing. So, is it taking a bubble bath? Is it cuddling up with a book at the end of the day? Is it, what is it? It can be something small and simple, but that's where the gratitude comes in. Like the recognizing it is really powerful.
I challenge people. I'm sure there's people listening, or maybe now or when they're listening to the podcast, but if you have to ask yourself that, I can't remember the last time I had fun and I'm trying to figure out when
Mm,
that was, you might be stressed,
yeah,
and you might need to intervene with yourself
yeah,
and sit down. And you can self intervene, and you can intentionally sit down, make a list,
yeah.
and then go do one of those things and see if you can challenge yourself to go have fun.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great advice. I love the Brene Brown did a summer series of podcasts, and one of the ones was really talking about rest and play. And I love this quote from that. It takes courage to say yes to rest and play in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. And so, I think that that's, again, the culture that we're in. And I think that we've got to be cognizant of that and say, nope, not for me. I recognize that rest and play actually does make me more productive, more successful, more of who I want to be. Because we're just, but we have that culture where we ask, hey, how you doing? I catch myself now. I don't let myself say that anymore because that's the go-to. Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. It's how are you doing? Oh, it's been so busy. It's like, come on, you can do better than that. But that's the culture. That's the I have value, I have worth because I'm so busy. I'm just exhausted. What would it look like if we really shifted to this culture where we more valued the rest and play and said, I did something fun. I was gardening and dug in the dirt, and that's my big success for this week is I took time for me. And that's a lot of what I know. I've really been trying to uh, move myself modeling that, but then also encouraging and challenging others to do as well, especially after this very long 19, 20 months of navigating this pandemic. I think it exhausted us. And I think that many of us have been working more than we realize because we are so close to our offices,
Mhm, mhm.
we've got to be really intentional about getting back to taking good care of ourselves and moving out of
I
that.
just got an idea.
Please share.
Yeah.
What if we created a 30 days of fun challenge where we challenge people to do something fun once a day, every day for 30 days? If for you just listening, Michelle has really literally raised her witch's hat because she loves Halloween week. It's her favorite.
Oh, I
And
love
Yeah,
it.
every
that's
I
I
love it.
day,
think that's a lot of how fun got started in this company's culture was they realized, oh, Michelle really gets into dressing up for Halloween.
she's been hiding her witch's hat this whole time.
Just waiting for the right moment. And then
Waiting.
boom, Karen
Mhm.
starts talking about fun and we have this whole conversation. It's like,
Oh,
wait.
well, what does fun look like? Fun might look like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me, I have my
Absolutely.
Sharpie ready so I can draw at any moment's notice.
There you go. There you go. I
But
love
30
it.
days of fun, that'd be a fun little campaign.
I think that would be great.
That would be fun.
I love that idea. And that again, it's really about challenging folks to not, it doesn't have to be these big, amazing things. Like what's the small stuff, you know? Um, you know, I, uh, my daughter's back from Portland. And so she's staying with us while they're searching for a house. And, just the other night, we just, sat and played Scrabble. I mean, it was just like game night in the middle of the week. It wasn't like a weeknight or whatever. I mean, a weekend night, right? I mean, it was just a small thing, but I had so much fun. Like afterwards, I was like, thank you. Like I love that it sort of shifted the whole week for me because it's like I don't again, I think we have a tendency not to give ourselves permission to do those fun things in the middle of, the week or on a daily basis. So I love
Mhm.
that idea. Yeah, yeah. And then it'd be great to hear what people are doing.
I know.
And it's
So
fun to hear that about you, Michelle. So our family had a Halloween party this weekend, just us, because all of my adult kids are now here um, with their partners and stuff. And so they really wanted to. I'm not going to be in town for Halloween, so they're like, let's celebrate this weekend. So we carved pumpkins, and then we told spooky stories and played silly games with prizes and had fun spooky drinks and desserts, and we all had to dress up. So everybody was in costume. I'm so tempted to go get my penguin hat, but I was like, where is my penguin hat? But that notion that only, kids, can have their little Halloween parties or that a Halloween party has to be this big thing. Like we literally just had sandwiches and chips and like we made it super simple. And it was just fun. And we created the space for it. And I love this idea of encouraging others to do the same. Definitely a great way to manage stress.
awesome. I think on that note, we're probably about at time.
Yeah, I think
We
we
are.
are.
It
Indeed.
has been a
As
moment of flow because for me, I have certainly lost sense of the passage of time.
yeah,
We've been talking for 43 minutes. It feels like 4.
yeah.
Yeah, state of flow.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's been a great conversation. And it's been great, honestly, because some of it is about getting to know you better as well. And I think that's the other piece is around that connectedness, how we all need to create space just to get curious
Mhm.
about each other. And I love that idea as well. So it's been fun being curious and exploring the things that bring us joy and the things that stress us out and how we battle all those things with fun and joy and taking good care of ourselves. So awesome. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.